Tensions between India and Pakistan have reached their highest point in years. Border strikes, drone warfare, trade disruptions, and millions of lives on edge, 2025 has become a year of crisis. Welcome to Maps and Motives. Subscribe now to stay ahead as we unpack whether this is heading toward full-scale war or another fragile peace. On April 22nd, militants attacked tourists in Pahalgam, killing 26 civilians. India instantly blamed Pakistan-based groups, triggering sharp border escalation along Kashmir's line of control. The attack shocked the nation and set off a chain reaction of military and diplomatic moves. News footage showed emergency vehicles rushing to the scene, grieving families, and a country in mourning. This single event would become the spark for a much larger crisis, as both sides began to mobilize their forces and rhetoric intensified across the region. On May 7th, India launched Operation Sindoor, deep air and missile strikes on 9 camps in Pakistan, which India claimed to be harboring terrorists. It was India's first cross-border strike of this depth since 12019, an unprecedented escalation using BrahMos and Scalp-Egg missiles. The operation was carried out with precision, targeting camps believed to be responsible for the Pahalgam attack. Satellite imagery revealed the extent of the damage, and the world watched as India demonstrated its military capabilities. The strikes meant to send a clear message to Pakistan that India was willing to escalate in response to terrorism. Pakistan, on the other hand, reportedly downed 5 Indian jets. In response, Pakistan launched Operation Bunyan Marsus, artillery and drone strikes targeting Indian military bases. Targets were hit in Poonch, and the risk of major escalation loomed. Pakistani missile units fired across the border, and drones targeted key Indian installations. The exchanges lasted for days, with both sides suffering casualties and infrastructure damage. The world watched anxiously as the conflict threatened to spiral out of control. After days of intense exchanges, a tense ceasefire was brokered on May 10th, with U.S. mediation urging both sides to step back from the brink. Diplomatic channels worked overtime to prevent further escalation, and leaders from around the world called for restraint. The ceasefire brought a temporary halt to the violence, but tensions remained high, and both militaries stayed on alert. Despite the ceasefire, violations and drone skirmishes have resumed along the border, keeping tensions simmering. Daily reports of small arms fire, artillery exchanges, and drone incursions have become the new normal along the line of control. Both sides accuse each other of breaking the ceasefire, and the risk of renewed escalation remains ever present. India kicked off Exercise Akraman in April, large-scale air drills with Rafale and Su-30 jets, signaling full military readiness and a willingness to respond to any provocation. These exercises involved thousands of personnel and showcased India's advanced air power, sending a strong signal to both domestic and international audiences. India has taken its case to the global stage, blaming Pakistan for terrorism at the Quad Summit, suspending the Indus Waters Treaty and closing airspace, trade, and even water flows. At international forums, Indian leaders have called for global action against terrorism and sought to isolate Pakistan diplomatically. The suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty and closure of trade routes have had significant economic impacts on both countries. Pakistan denies involvement and accuses India of provoking escalation while flooding domestic media with counter-narratives. The information war has intensified, with both sides using media to shape public opinion and rally support. Diplomatic pressure and sanctions have further strained relations, making compromise increasingly difficult. India's military alleges that China provided live battlefield intelligence to Pakistan, while Turkey supplied drones and trained personnel. These claims have raised concerns about the involvement of major powers in the conflict, and the possibility of a wider regional escalation. Pakistan strongly rejects these claims, but the idea of proxy involvement by China and Turkey amplifies the risk of escalation and complicates any path to peace. The presence of advanced drones and real-time intelligence has changed the nature of the conflict, making it more unpredictable and dangerous. India has held nationwide civil defense drills, Operation Abhyas, across 244 districts, testing sirens, blackouts, and evacuations in case of major escalation. These drills involved millions of civilians and were designed to prepare the population for any emergency scenario. Meanwhile, Pakistan has increased defense spending by roughly 20% post-crisis, preparing for a protracted confrontation. The government has announced new procurement deals for military equipment and has ramped up recruitment and training. Both nations are bracing for the possibility of a long-term standoff, with significant resources devoted to defense. What comes next? Here are 5 possible near-future scenarios. 1. Drone and artillery exchanges continue with flare-ups but no major escalation. 2. A naval standoff, with both navies testing strategic depth. 3. A diplomatic breakthrough, with the US, China, or UN securing a stronger ceasefire and investigation. 4. Economic warfare, as water treaty revocation and trade bans deepen humanitarian strain. And 5. A Cold War shift, a prolonged strategic freeze with heavy militarization but no open war. Each scenario carries its own risks and challenges, and the choices made in the coming months will shape the future of the region. The standoff could be the most dangerous since 1971, a test of nuclear thresholds. Any misstep risks sliding into nuclear brinkmanship. Escalation would drive refugee movements, strain the regional economy, impact global energy security, and fracture diplomatic ties. The world is watching closely, as the consequences of conflict would be felt far beyond South Asia. In essence, India and Pakistan are locked in their most intense confrontation in decades, fueled by terrorism, national pride, and international actors. A return to sustained peace depends on careful diplomacy, transparency, and restraint. What's your take? Will diplomacy prevail, or is deeper conflict looming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this analysis? Subscribe for weekly Global Pulse, maps and motives. See you next time.